I don't know how to start. When I was a child, I guess I would say my parents were drug addicts. In fact, they used drugs while they was, and my mother did when she was pregnant with me. It was meth, speed, LSD, marijuana, alcohol, many others. Uh, I don't know them all, but I just know from word of mouth. Even my mom had told me later on in the future. Um, my dad beat my mom continuously, and they fought a lot. My parents split apart. I moved back to the United States with my mom when I was about 4 or 5. My mom could not handle working under people and do drugs and take care of 2 kids, so we were put into foster care. After leaving, being in foster care, we were in from home to home to home. However, my brother and I stayed pretty close. I protected him at any given cost. But anyway, I finally settled into another home that were said Christians, but however did not act according to that manner. While I was in foster care homes, I was molested. I was treated unfairly, locked in closets. I have a real vivid memory of being locked in a closet for hours at one time. Well, I went to the foster care home, the one I ended up being adopted through. They were Christians, however, but they were Christian extremists. They would not spoon feed the Bible, but they shovel fed it. And not only did they did not always act like the things they would preach to me. They forced me to go to church every time the door was opened. It really wasn't much force because I was in the churches I went to. The youth group was nice. Plus, it was nice to get out of the house because by the time I was 18, I've never been to really a football game. I wasn't allowed to play sports. I didn't know how to drive a car. I wasn't allowed to date. I remember specifically when I was 17, a girl had given me a love letter from school. It was in my pants pocket. My mom found it and she slapped the tar out of me for it. This is my adopted mom, by the way. And it's been other times I've been untreated fairly. I just didn't think. I knew who Christ was, but I didn't think he existed. I thought the whole story was a fictitious tale because how can you tell me one thing and do another? My dad sat there and watched pornography with me when I was a teenager, but yet go to church on Sunday and talk about people that watch pornography. How is a sin? Teach someone, tell me the church tells you to love others when he goes home and beats me and chokes me to almost pass out. But other times, the only thing my parents could ground me from was a TV. It was the only thing I allowed to do. When I was 16, I wanted to play guitar. My mother said if I could buy one, I could have one, and I would learn that way. But she was not going to spend a penny on it. When I was 13, I needed braces, and they refused to buy those. However, all the real kids, they all had braces. They had a car. They was allowed to date. They was allowed to play sports. Everything I was not allowed to play. We were treated different than the other kids. I hope my mom doesn't see this video because she claims she don't remember half of this, and I don't want to break her heart because I have forgiven her for the past. When I turned 18, actually, let's back that up a little bit. When I was about 16 or 17, I started huffing gas and solvents, glue, anything that I can huff would get me buzzed. And then I started smoking weed when I was 18. And before you know it, I couldn't find no weed from nobody, so I went out looking for a sack of weed, and I remember coming back and this man in the backyard that I was living with. I was homeless. Been chronically homeless since I was 18. Um, but now Actually, I'm still homeless as I speak. I had a nice place, but that's a little too far into the story. Well, anyway, I came in out there, and this guy, he was the guy that was living there at the house where I was working at. I was living with these people, chopping wood all day from sun up to sundown. And I'm talking about logs as big and as long, as big as wide as this couch I'm sitting on. I'd had to turn it to the side and roll it, then hit it with a hydraulic splitter. But anyway, he was shooting up crank. And for you that don't know what crank is a really strong methamphetamine that will blow the doors off of the ice they have out there today. But I became curious. I asked him for a shot, and he gave me a really, really large shot, enough to make my legs almost fall off from underneath me. But I felt weird. I felt different. I felt like Superman. But the point of this video has nothing to do with the way the drugs made me feel. I was really searching for something, someone to love me. An empty part of me was missing right in here. I felt the emptiness inside me. It was really, really a void that I tried years to cover. Drugs, I used to help fill that void, but the drugs also numbed me from my past and the life that I was living as a homeless vagrant, living in people's sheds. This people I was working at, chopping wood, I was living in his basement, to the point where the man that gave me the methamphetamine, he was stealing stuff, so they started blaming it on me, and I was not welcome there no more. So here I am, homeless again. The guy was paying me $20 a day to work about 10, 11 to 16 hours sometimes, just for food and a place to sleep. Well, I asked my mom, my birth mom, for help. I skipped that part. I found my birth mother when I was 18. I lived with her for about 4 or 5 months, and she says, yeah, really, I couldn't deal with kids, so I might have to get rid of you. So I was too much for her at the time, so she got rid of me, kicked me out, told me I couldn't live there no more. So I was still in school, so I had to drop out and get a job, support myself. For a while, I had 2 jobs, working at McDonald's and Waffle House. I'd get off one shift, change clothes, go to another shift. It was nice when I had 2 checks and then tips all week long. But I was working so much that I had lost focus on society. It was all about work, 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 pay bill, pay bill, pay bill. Well, one time a gentleman came to me at the Waffle House I was working at. He had a business proposition, which it fell out bad. I ended up going forward and losing everything that I had. When I came back, my mom put me in a motel room. In that motel room, she told me she'll pay for 2 weeks. And in that time, I had to find a job and pay my own way, which is fine in retrospect, but you got to realize sometimes it takes a week to find a job. Well, it took me about 3 days, and then they're going to hold you back 2 weeks, so it was a month before I even got paid. Well, 3 weeks before I got paid, and the rent was due long before then. So there I go back to doing drugs again, because I'm homeless. Drugs helped me get by. I didn't have to eat while I was doing drugs, because that's all I worried about was my next drug. Now I started breaking into cars, stealing stuff, breaking into buildings. Then I ended up breaking into it was a funeral, not a funeral home itself, but the thing to have the chapel for a funeral. While I was there, I stole about $100-something in the petty cash drawer, and I was in there with another guy that claimed to be my cousin, and we got, in the future, got caught. I went to jail for burglary of a building, and I don't know what become of him. I don't speak to him anymore. Ended up doing 2 years. While I was on 2 years, before I went to jail again on the burglary of a building, I injured my daughter. in a way that I wish I had never had. Being abused all my life, I didn't know shaking a child would hurt, injure a child. Well, I did that, and I'm very sorry. If I had only known that this would happen, I wouldn't took that path. Well, I shook my daughter and ended up taking 10 years on that. I ended up doing 12 years continuously in TDC. I got out, drugs picked up again, because by the time I got out of TDC, drugs was more plentiful than ever. And it was easier to get. And I was homeless, didn't really know anything else but drugs. I lived with a homosexual man once I got out of prison. He gave me a place to live, and then I got with a girlfriend, and then he got jealous because he staked his claim, so he would say. So me and him argued and fight over that, and then he threw me out because I would not be in a relationship with him. Well, we lived in an apartment complex. The lady I lived with, the girlfriend I had, she was a very, very bad alcoholic. So it was kind of enabling for me to do the drugs that I wanted to do, because she did some drugs and alcohol, basically crack. But I started smoking crack, started doing ice, smoking weed, drinking beer, everything else in between. So I ended up leaving Midland, Texas. The thing is, her and I had a son together, and she got drunk and attacked me with a son in my hand, and he hurt himself. Well, it was her fault that he was injured. He fractured his skull in 4 places. And with the background that I had, not being able to pass the drug test, they took my child from me as well. I love my son, Isaiah. I never would have done anything to harm him. At any rate, that relationship ended roughly. I met a girl online on one of these chatting dead sites, and she claimed to live in Reno, Nevada, so I went out to Reno, Nevada to go find her, and she stood me up. I was homeless in Reno, nowhere to go, living in a tent in the wintertime, and that's cold, trust you. In the Sierra Mountains, when it's 16 degrees below zero, it is pretty cold. So I moved back to Texas. I had met the girl that I had my first child from, the one I injured. I met her again. I lived with her, and she had turned into a meth addict while I was incarcerated. She used to be about 300 pounds. When I seen her again, she was about 200. She lost almost 100 pounds off of meth. Well, lo and behold, it didn't take long before me to start using. So I started using meth again. Much worse this time, because she knew all the cooks. And well, I got arrested again for driving with no driver's license. And I was working to help support and pay rent and everything while I was incarcerated. She stole my check. Well, I told her let's not quite say she stole it. I gave her permission to pay the rent. When I got out of jail, all my money was gone. So we broke up. Because of that, I ended up going to a homeless shelter in Fort Worth, where I still smoke pot. I met my wife now, Patricia Rainey. I love you, babe. She's in the other room watching TV, so if you hear noise in the background, it's her. But anyway, the whole time I've been avoiding God, not praying to Him. While I was in prison, I ended up studying Wicca and became a second-degree witch. And that was the closest thing I felt to a loving religion in a long time, because of the abuse that my parents had put me through. It's showing me that's how God is. So I feared Christians. I feared anybody that claimed that they were a Christian. I feared being near them. So why not join their counterpart, witchcraft? Well, lo and behold, I found out at the homeless shelter that God is not about that. He's about love. But it didn't quite sink in yet. I was still searching for that void. The drugs was the only thing that numbed me. I started getting really tore up off of methamphetamine. It got out of control and out of hand to the point where I was sleeping on the streets. Literally sleeping on the sidewalk, skitzing in the middle of the street. I didn't care. I ended up stealing so much. I've been arrested almost 50 something times. I've got 8 felonies on my record. Count that, 8 felonies. I've been arrested almost 50 sometimes, and I'm 40 years old. This has only happened since I was 18. And I've been to prison 3 times. Wow, it's an astronomical number now that I think about it. Well, I ended up owing a drug dealer in Fort Worth a lot of money, about $2,000. Behind fronts on methamphetamine, getting more, and not paying my bill. And he threatened to kill my wife. Threatened to kill me. Even put an AK-47, a military issue with a bayonet that slings out like a switchblade, to me. He said, "Look, I'll shoot you in the foot. I'll take $100 off your bill. I'll shoot you in the chest, and if you live, I'll take $1,000 off of it." I was scared. So I took my wife, and we went to Colorado. Oh no, I'm sorry. We went to San Antonio, and then went to Lawton, Oklahoma, where I started going to church, and I started getting good in my Bible. Started worshiping the Lord. I became an usher. Until this lady that was an usher there talked behind my back to another guy, said he shouldn't be an usher. He might still owe those people money, and they start coming here to shoot our church up. And I felt really wounded about it, so I left. I blame God again for the problems that man has caused me. When I moved from Lawton, Oklahoma, back to Texas to live with my wife's sister, and I was looking for a church, and Lord knows I didn't expect this one. Right around the corner from my house, about a half a block walking, maybe a block walking, there is a really good church called Harvest Temple in Grand Prairie. And the pastor, Danny Ramos, tells you like it is. And he tells you the truth. And you can tell the sincerity when he preaches. And I sit there and listen. A couple of sermons didn't sink in. I'm 40 years old. All this stuff, and all my life, people had told me all these interventions people would give me, and not once of them sunk in. But one day, I went, and the Holy Spirit was just roaring through that church, and I could feel it. And I felt like a holy smackdown just happened to me when he was preaching. I listened to it. I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There's things in your life right now you need to change. And if you wonder what it is, it's what you're thinking about right now." And right then I was thinking about a lot of the stuff that I was doing that was not right. It was not pleasing to God. Well, I felt conviction really, really serious. I'm talking about, I felt conviction before, but nothing like this. Nothing. So I went down to the altar and prayed, and I've been keeping my life right with God since. I am blessed. I am happy. I have never been so full of joy, except for when sometimes I get a little upset when the devil's attacking me. If anybody knows, the things that's been happening in my life right now is pretty rough ever since I started not wanting, but because I started minister school. In fact, I'm having to drop out because it's too tasking of me, working a full-time job and going to full-time college, and support my wife that's disabled is really too much for me. I want to, and I learned that you don't really need to go to college to be an ordained minister. All you need is ordained, and God ordains. And man cannot destroy what God ordains. I want you to remember that. Well, I hope this video was inspiring. I know it's longer about my sin than about God, but this has only happened. I've only really dedicated my life to the Lord about a month and a half to 2 months ago. but I feel on fire for him, and I'll do anything for my Lord. And I wish that you, right now, seeing this, will get your life right, because I'm going to tell you something. The end is coming, and it is right around the corner, trust me. There are many signs that are living out the Bible as we speak right now. Even with this transgender and the world at war, I mean, mark my words, the world is supposed to turn against Israel, and when it does, all holy hell is about to break loose. And God is going to bring it, and he's going to have his wrath upon America.